Hello and welcome to the Video Creator Show, where we talk the juicy details of how to succeed on YouTube. And what better way to do that than to talk directly to someone who has done it. Today, I'm speaking with the creator of Thunderbolt 1000 Siren Productions, a YouTube channel that is home of the famous documentaries of train wrecks and other noteworthy tales from railroads. His name is Thomas, and his channel currently sits at over 100,000 subscribers and over 34 million total channel views. He knows more about trains and the stories behind them than most anyone you'll ever meet. Today, I'll be speaking with Thomas about how he built Thunderbolt 1000 Siren Productions to where it is today. But first, the Video Creator Show is brought to you by VidChops.com, an editing service that helps take the burden of editing off your back. Check out VidChops.com to see how you can save yourself tons of time and energy while taking your YouTube channel to the next level. Thomas, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's such an honor to be here to talk about, my channel and my story and how the heck I got to where I am now.
Mm-hmm. And so, obviously, you are passionate about trains. I'm guessing this enthusiasm has been with you pretty much your whole life, especially just from watching your channel. It's clear there's something about trains that really gets you fired up. And this is kind of an aspect of things that I think a lot of people maybe don't think about. I was watching your video about a runaway train, and this guy had 30 cars in his train as opposed to 23, so the train was way heavier, and it was on like a 1% downward grade, and this train is just barreling forward at 75 miles an hour. I mean, oh my god.
Yeah, that's the good old story of Nepiziget. I know I mispronounced it in the original video, but yeah, the correct pronunciation is Nepiziget, not Nepiziguit. But anyway, the story of my love for trains, it starts way back because with a combination of visits to railroads in the local area, such as the New Hope Railroad, which I currently work at. I have a photo of one of the engines right on that horn over there. Combination of visiting them a lot and a certain blue tank engine that shares my first name. I've been pretty much into trains. Yeah, absolutely. Even though the name actually came from the Italian translation from my mom's side of the family, because they were known as the Tommaso. So my dad came up with the name, and that's how it turned out to be. But yeah, ever since then, watching tons of VHS tapes of Thomas and Friends as a kid, I've been pretty much into trains since I was a little kid. And in terms of starting the channel, I didn't really start into it until I was at least 13 years old, because at first, when I first discovered YouTube back in like 2007, I just saw all kinds of videos, from mostly cat videos to all kinds of other things, and I was like, wow, there's a whole site just dedicated to videos? So anyways, at first, when I created the channel, I was more leaning toward air raid sirens, hence the channel name.
Mm-hmm.
But over time, I'd say like 2014, 2015, that started to fade away, but the name was stuck, so I was like, screw it, I'm just going to go with it. But in terms of popularity, I was pretty much a nobody when I started on YouTube. I only had like 40 or 50 subs, just uploading videos of like trains or siren tests or any other random crap I managed to come up with. That was until around I'd say mid 2017, where I saw this one video that was covering the Wichita Falls, Texas tornado of 1979, I believe it was. The video had really, really great visuals, like real actual photos and videos of the tornado. It had really haunting, ominous music, and I'd seen it before, but seeing it again, I was like, wow, I thought to myself, what if I made something similar, but in this case on a train wreck? By chance, the 30th anniversary of the Chase, Maryland incident was coming up, which was where a stoned Conrail crew missed several signals, diverted onto the main line, and got rear-ended by an Amtrak train before they could even know what was coming up behind them at over 120 miles an hour.
Oh my god.
So at first I kind of considered that as like a one-off, just like a special little anniversary video, that sort of thing. I didn't intend for it to become a series. That was until I noticed a lot of people started commenting and saying, like, I never knew about this. This was really, really cool. And in the remaster version that I did 5 years later, I actually got a comment from an actual survivor who even linked me photos from his point of view of the incident, and they were just amazing. So
Wow.
I figured to myself, if people like it, maybe I might do another one. Fast forward to I'd say 2018, I made the documentary on the Big Bayou incident, Amtrak's worst crash, which was killed about 47 people. Misaligned bridge from being hit by a boat causes the Sunset Limited to go yeet right into the Mobile River in Alabama. Once again, people really seemed to like it, and I was thinking to myself, I got something going here. People are liking this. Like, people must like death and destruction. I guess I don't know.
What do you think it is about trains that is so interesting to people? I mean, obviously there's the death and destruction aspect, kind of the tragedy, but even so, like, you have videos where the whole video is basically just a radio chat between an engineer and like the control room. I don't know the correct terminology exactly.
The dispatching
The
office,
the
but
dispatch office, yeah. Like, what is it about trains that is so fascinating to people? There's almost like a nostalgic aspect to them. They're obviously huge and like noisy, but in kind of a, I don't know, an intimidating way. What is it about trains that is so appealing to people?
well, to me, basically, it's just the awe-inspiring like size and how these are just big, heavy metal machines weighing hundreds of tons, and when they're going 55 miles an hour, it takes more than a mile to stop them.
Yeah.
Even though many people seem to still ignore that fact by going around the gates at several crossings, I've caught that more times than you can count because people don't know how to drive. But in terms of just the size and aspect of trains, that's something that's always fascinated me. The almost musical sound of whistles or horns, like this thing sitting right behind me. But I've been, like I said, it was something. I think the best way to put it is from some Thomas and Friends episodes that I watched. For example, one of them was funny enough titled just Fish. There's this one scene where one of the characters, Henry, is departing with a long fish train called the Flying Kipper, and there's a very low tone music track that plays in the background, and all you can hear mainly is just the sounds of the pistons pumping as Henry's getting the train into motion. It's just, I don't know, it's just the feeling of something that heavy and that size just being able to move is just honestly pretty intimidating and pretty cool. And that's kind of and just all the unique shapes and sizes of trains is why I've been traveling to places from New Hope, where I work at, or even better, going to as far as Cumberland, Maryland, to see one of the biggest steam engines that's operational on the East Coast. Now, in terms of that audio recording that you mentioned
Hmm.
earlier of the Norfolk Southern helper crew giving the dispatcher a bit of an earful about why you shouldn't tie down a train on a 2% grade, because 2% grade, that's like nothing in terms of automobile terms, but to trains, that's a pretty steep grade.
Yeah, because they're so
Not the
heavy.
steepest. Not the steepest though. That belongs to Saluda out in I think it's like South Carolina or something like that. I'm not 100% sure, but I do know of Saluda. But anyway, I just found that recording, honestly pretty humorous and,
Yeah.
really showing what's been going on with railroad operations nowadays with trains that are over 12,000 feet long and just how they're being pretty much run into the ground and stuff like that. So I thought it would be pretty funny to upload that. And apparently a lot of people seem to really enjoy it.
Hmm.
I've heard funnier stuff though, like when a Norfolk Southern crewman dropped the N word on the feed.
Oh, geez.
I wish I was making that up, but that happened. Unfortunately, Broadcastify deleted the recording before it could even go live. But oh man, you should have heard it. I was like, oh no, he didn't.
Well, drama over the radio. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Can you describe to people what rail fanning is for those who don't know?
Well, basically, rail fanning is people like me take like a camera and equipment and such to just go out and film the trains as they're going by, whether it's hopping from place to place to chase one particular train. Like, for example, with 1309, when I went to the C&O 1309, when I went to Cumberland, Maryland. I started off there, then I went up to what's known as Helmsetter's Curve, which is one of the sharpest. It's almost like Horseshoe Curve in Altoona. It's a really, really sharp hairpin type of curve, and I wanted to get a shot like that where you have the locomotive just curving around such a sharp bend. It's just something about that was pretty cool. And also, sometimes what I like to do behind the scenes, while I'm waiting for the train to come back and I'm hearing like the distant sounds of the train whistling for other crossings, sometimes I'll leave like one of my other cameras recording in the background just to capture that ambient sound, because the locomotive was wearing an old New York Central 6 chime, and unfortunately a lot of New York Central steam is extinct. So if you put that into perspective and you were to listen to that with your eyes closed, it's almost like a ghost calling into the atmosphere. And speaking of haunting atmospheres, I especially loved when I went after there was this double header with 2 steam locomotives in Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, and yeah, that ambient sound of the whistles bouncing off the Poconos was just, ooh, it gave me the chills.
Oh. Yeah, well, there is kind of a strange atmosphere around trains, and obviously this one in particular. But yeah, there's something about a train coming around a mountain pass that is it's the train to Hogwarts. There's like a mystical element to them, especially like a steam engine or like the steam coming out the top.
I've honestly said it before, like in the video where I talked about the incident in Gettysburg. They're basically like living, breathing iron horses. Like the sound of the steam. It's like them breathing. The whistle is them singing in a tune, and they also have a personality. I know that for a fact because when I worked at New Hope, we have our own steam engine, a little 280 consolidation, which is referencing the amount of wheels it has. That thing basically. One of my employees described it as being like an e-girl. Like, she's not really well known in terms of in the general community. But once you get to know her, she's pretty interesting to find. But when you work with her long enough, she's a little crazy.
So your niche here is pretty fascinating to me. For those who haven't seen your channel, I mean, your highest viewed videos have like 5 million views, 2 million views.
Yeah, I still can't believe that myself. That all those documentaries have been accumulating millions of views. One good example was the incident at Strasbourg that happened recently. A maintenance away crew forgot to realign the switch after doing work the night before, and here comes 475 with an excursion, and because the switch was lined the wrong way and the crew didn't notice, they went boom face first right into a excavator that was parked in the siding.
Oh my god.
And as soon as I heard that incident, because I got a couple messages from subscribers about it, I don't do very recent train accidents because oftentimes there's not enough info to work with. I at least wait for a final report to come out from like the NTSB or whatever proper authorities. But after hearing about it, and since I'm only an hour away from Strasbourg from where I'm sitting right now, I immediately hopped in my car, raced up 202, Route 30 to get all the way up to Lemon Place Junction to see what I could get. I couldn't get that much, but I was said to be one of the only people to be at ground zero as close as I could after the accident happened. And within a week after uploading my video of my little skirmish up there, the views were just whoop. It was like over 10,000 views within a week, and I was like, wow, that was a smart move.
So when it comes to making these videos, they're usually anywhere from like 10 minutes to, much longer, maybe like 20 minutes. They do very well for you. What is your process for making these videos? You said you tend to cover accidents or wrecks that are older because there's more information on them, maybe less emotion around it too at this point. It's easier to kind of be objective. But like, as far as your production process, do you do all your own editing? I know you do your own voiceover. Like, what does it look like to start a video and then finish one?
That's actually a really good question. It is a very long and tedious procedure sometimes. And even though I said I do older accidents, sometimes when you get really, really old, like the Camp Hill disaster, which is known as the Great Train Wreck of 1856 to everybody else, sometimes that info becomes a little scarce. Like I could not find a single photo of either of the locomotives involved, and the only photos of the accident were artist renditions. But basically, when it comes to making one of those documentaries, the first phase is always research. The first thing I try and look for is at least a federal report from like the NTSB, Ministry of Transport and Civil Aviation in the UK's example. Just finding a concrete report to find out what exactly happened. If that's not the case, like for example, incidents at Camp Hill or the Armagh incident, I at least try and look for like historical society sites or anything that has like expert testimony on what exactly happened. Um, so that usually takes a good amount of time. And once I find the report, I start typing out a script in my own words, of course, that at least, I can understand what the heck I'm saying sometimes. And yeah, although basically to sum it up shortly, everything that makes those videos is one man doing it. It's not like there's a whole team of editors or there's like a whole, batch of people to do filming for me. I'm basically all on my own. So once I get the script done, I start looking for like photos and videos. Sometimes that does require having to ask permission for some footage and even paying footage licenses. Like for the Lewisham incident, I had to pay a pretty good chunk of change to license some of that news footage, even though it was old from like the 1950s. Otherwise I would get sued to copyright buggery.
Mm-hmm.
So,
that was
but let's say.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
But let's say if I have footage of like some of the area where it happened, like for example with the Amtrak 188 incident, that's only about 45 minutes away from where I'm sitting because I'm like not that far from downtown Philly. If I have footage of the location, that I took myself, or even footage of locomotives that are exactly the same or similar, I will use that to save a bit of time. And the best example was Operation Pistorius, which was a bit of an experimental video about the failed sabotage of many places in North America. I happen because getting licenses for World War II footage is an absolute pain. But by chance, I went to a World War II weekend event at Reading at their regional airport, and they did a little reenactment of a skirmish in a French village, and I was like, that's perfect. Now I don't have to worry about paying thousands of dollars. So, yeah, if I can take shortcuts with footage with my own stuff, I'll definitely do it. Then it comes to the narration process, which sounds easy, but it's not. Even though I speak English, I trip on my lines more often than you would think. Anybody that can do a narration script in one sitting is obviously lying. So
it's surprisingly difficult.
Sometimes I'll even pause the the recording to double check on some pronunciations, especially with one video I'm working on right now on Sri Lanka, because all the pronunciations are, of a different language. So you want to make sure you're conveying the information correctly. And then with the editing process, it's basically I start importing everything into my editing system, which is Adobe Premiere, which works pretty well. Some people say it's difficult, but I've basically self-taught myself several things, and it's also kind of similar to Final Cut Pro on Apple because I used to use that a lot in high school. And then once all the editing is done, I try and balance out the audio so that you can hear me talking and not have the audio blasted out by background audio and stuff like that. So, and then after that, I do, once everything's done, I export it at least the day before the incident, because usually what I try and do with my documentaries as like a little bit of a tribute to the victims, I at least try and upload the video on the actual upcoming anniversary when it happened, because it's a little bit of it makes it for where I'm following an absolutely irregular schedule, but I try to stick to at least one video, one documentary a month if I can.
That seems like a good number to me, especially like with how many views these things can get. Like you want to take your time on it. And as far as like growing a YouTube channel, I think your niche is a good example of a channel where it's best not to release every day or super often. I think taking your time with something like this, where you want to get all the information correct, you want to make sure your licensing is on point, and you know, there's probably a somewhat limited number of things that you can cover. Obviously, like I don't think you're going to run out anytime soon, but if you made a video every day, that would be it would be a lot easier to, I think, run out of material or at least kind of be stretched very thin. So
Exactly.
yeah, for something where I think the information and storytelling is the most important aspect of your channel, and clearly like your release schedule is what it should be. And again, like with videos that can get over 1 million views, like you're building them to have a long shelf life, not to, you know, just get a few views in the short run. That's a totally different style of running a YouTube channel, and especially, you know, you work for a railroad, and it's you got plenty of other things on your plate as well. So no
Absolutely.
reason to go too far with this.
Yeah, so I even sometimes do this trick where once I'm exporting one of those videos, because even with how beefy of a computer I have, 32 gigabytes of RAM, 2 hard drives, all that stuff, it takes on average, like depending on the length of video, it could take almost as long as 2 hours for it to export. So sometimes what I
Mm.
do is I'll set the video to start exporting just before I start going to bed, and then sleep out the night, and by the time I'm fresh and awake, the video is exported, it's all done, ready to go. It's not the healthiest thing to do to a PC, but
It's
it's what
probably all
I
right.
do. Or even better, I could even do it during a work shift, and then uh, eventually, once the computer is done, it'll just hold off for a while, because if it shut, because the worst thing I've had sometimes is a video, like almost an hour long video exporting, and all of a sudden my computer decides to automatically restart with updates, and it totally screws everything up, and I'm like,
Hmm. Yeah,
no.
that is the worst. It is the worst. So is
uh,
as far as like monetizing your channel, what are the ways that you make money off of this?
Well, one of the main ways is, of course, ad revenue with how much, ads
Right.
play on certain videos. But I did also, as like, a way to help support the channel, I even have both a GoFundMe, so people can just do like a one-time donation to help, keep the lights on and uh, get everything else going along in my life, as well as pay for like licensing and stuff. I have like a GoFundMe that I've linked in my channel, as well as a Patreon, which almost every major content creator has, to, so people can help support the channel. And as a thank you, like for the GoFundMe donors, they are automatically thanked in all the credits reel on my videos, even though
Hmm.
nobody reads credit reels these days. but
It's a nice
and
touch.
I also, and also for like Patreon, I even link them to like sneak peeks and stuff like that, as well as unreleased clips from behind the scenes when filming and stuff like that. But yeah, in terms of making money off of the channel, obviously the main one is ad revenue, but I mainly rely on GoFundMe and Patreon. I even used some of my GoFundMe funds to actually fund one of the videos, which was the cab ride video I did with the New Hope Railroad, which was about a year or two before I got hired. And even though that was a bit of a crazy, all over the place video, that was a lot of fun to experience that for the first time, as well as meet up with my soon-to-be coworkers, and one of them absolutely loved one of the lines that was said during the cab ride, where our shop guy was trying to unscrew one of the bolts in the firebox, and the fireman was like, "You want some gloves?" Nah, I don't wear bee mittens. uh,
So have you thought about sponsorships, especially with how well your videos can do?
oh, absolutely. I've One sponsorship opportunity I would love to have definitely is with a company by the name of Curiosity Stream, because
Yeah.
they specialize in documentaries, and I'm thinking that's great. That's what I make. I'm definitely willing at some point to give them a little call to see what they would want to do with sponsorship opportunities. Because unfortunately, a lot of the so-called sponsorship emails I get, a quick 5-minute Google search, automatically raises red flags of like scams and stuff like that. So obviously, I want to be careful. But at some point in the future, yeah, definitely, I want to look into like getting a sponsorship with some people like that. And one idea I even had was with a company, Gaijin, who makes War Thunder, because I've live streamed their game every once in a while. And sometimes if you get like a creator affiliate link, people that use that link will also not only get 3% going back to the channel, but also they would get like a free little decal to stick on whatever vehicle it is that they want to use. Obviously, it would be something train related, like the Pennsylvania Railroad Keystone that was on the side of a B-24 named the Paoli Local, which was made up of former Pennsylvania Railroad employees. Because even though the funny thing about the war, most railroad employees were exempt from the draft, but if they were on a really low income kind of a job, like Pullman like a Pullman clerk or something like that, they would unfortunately still be drafted. So these crew made up the B-24 Paoli Local, but unfortunately, that said bomber was shot down in 1943 over Austria. So, something like that, hell, I'm all for it.
Mm-hmm. And so, as far as I feel like you and your channel, like this is a really good lesson in like if you're passionate about something, if you have a lot to say about something, you're probably gonna do well on YouTube if you cover that. Like even like you just talking about, that downed bomber and railroad employees being exempt from the draft. Like you have so much information about trains and that nobody like most people don't know about. Like you're the guy to go to for train stories, like it's
In fact, that's how I get spotted a lot at like rail fan events. Just by the sound of my voice, they'll be like, "Aren't you Thunderbolt?" Or like, "Aren't you the guy that does those train wreck videos?" And I'm like,
fellow rail
mm-hmm.
fans.
Yep, I even got spotted not just at rail fan events or stuff like that. One time I was at a like I think it's like a Sky Zone, anti-gravity kind of fun zone sort of thing. I was there for my birthday with my girlfriend, and somebody who went to my who went to the same middle school I go to happened to recognize me there because of my voice. It's getting to the point where I can't go anywhere without being recognized. But hey, that's not a bad thing.
That's awesome too, because you're in a niche, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you have to worry about going to a grocery store and getting mobbed. But if you go
Yeah.
to like a rail station or something like that, then you're going to be around people who understand trains and they're also passionate about them. And
Mm-hmm.
that sounds fun, like a good place to be. Like you can still live your life and be anonymous, but then go to these certain areas where then you're a star. And
Mm-hmm.
like that's kind of the sweet spot in my opinion of fame.
Yeah, because the thing is, when I was growing up, in like middle school and even high school, I was originally just that one quiet kid that always sat alone at like the lunch table or stuff like that. But eventually, over time, as the channel started to take off, I began to think to myself, you know what, maybe living in the spotlight isn't actually that bad after all. I mean, it does have its downsides, but the upsides are just way too good to ignore.
And so that was something I wanted to touch on. What is the before and after? So like before you started this channel, your life was a certain way. After you start this channel, like how has YouTube changed your life or the way that you look at things?
Well, I no longer became the quiet kid for a start.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, before the channel started to take off, like I said, I was pretty much a nobody. I was just some dork with a camera that wanted to show stuff that not many people got to see before. And like I said, I was a little bit on the depressive side, because my family divorced when I was really really young, so I wasn't really in that good of a spot. But over time, though, once the channel started to get more and more support, I realized I had a thing going. This is a good like little possible career path to go to. And after the channel, where we are sitting right now, it's honestly, I always look for, it's not like where I'm dreading making the next video because I know it's not going to do well. I'm actually, looking forward to it. And sometimes when I'm checking out the channel, I glance at stuff like the subscriber number or the revenue analytics, and it kind of gives me a little of an inspiration, to want to make that a little bit higher.
Totally. And so is this a big source of revenue for you? Like you obviously have a day job, and at least in your channel's description, it says you have 2 jobs. I don't know if that's up to date.
Yeah, that is true. The main one is obviously the one with New Hope Railroad. I do also have a side job with a small business called My Custom Closet. They're based out of Collegeville, which is in the middle of nowhere in southeast Pennsylvania, where I basically every Tuesday and Thursday I'd go out with a couple of guys and we'd go to somebody's house, usually a new build, like the copy and paste townhouses you keep seeing popping up. Install whatever closet they to their specifications, drawers, the shelves, all that jazz. Of course, both that and especially with New Hope, even though it's a seasonal job since it's a tourist railroad, this time of the year is obviously the busiest because of all the Christmas stuff that goes around. And last year,
Christmas trains.
Oh yeah, especially Polar Express themed.
Yep.
Woo! Boy, I was pulling 16-hour shifts.
Oh my god! Wow.
But hey, even with all that, it is still a major player in terms of my revenue, and of course that always depends on how many videos I release. Like some months I'm only earning like 500, and it's a bit of a flop. But there's some months like November where I made a lot more because not only did I release a couple good bangers of videos, but also a lot of people. It was just the right, especially with the Strasburg incident, it was just the right place, right time, and I just, I knew if I were to sit at home and just cry about it, I wasn't going to go anywhere with it. But if I were to make the venture all the way up to all the way up to Paradise, because that's literally the name of the town Lemon Place Junction is in, go all the way up there, document the story. It was just, it made me feel good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure it's nice to have a couple different jobs as well. Like for me, if I have one job, it's kind of boring. But you have like a YouTube channel, you're installing closets and things like that, and then obviously working for an actual railroad. And I think that's sort of a cornerstone of like being an online creator in a way, is being involved in several different ways of making money. That seems to be kind of a big part of the lifestyle, and somebody who that appeals to is probably going to do well online in like having an online presence. Was that always something that you wanted to do, having several different streams of income, or was this just kind of something that happened and you realized that you liked living like this?
Honestly, it was just something that just came out of the blue because, like I said, with the documentaries at first, they weren't intended to be a series, and of course, I didn't think it would take off. But over time, I've been even my parents were saying like, hey, there's actually a really good market you could be making out of this, and I was like, that's actually a really good point. So basically, to answer that question is yes and no. I didn't expect it to grow the way it is, especially over 100,000 subscribers. But to actually have that option, especially as like a major back in some of my finances, it's definitely been one heck of a what's the word? It's basically been one of the greatest things that could have happened to me.
Mm-hmm. And do you have like future YouTube plans, or are you just looking to keep adding to this channel, keep doing what you're doing, or do you have kind of new projects where you're like, oh, that could be cool, I'm gonna do that one day?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I have a lot of different things. I definitely want to, touch on not just train accidents. I even touched on stuff like not only Operation Pastorius, but the infamous Crazy Eight's Runaway, just random stuff that have happened on railroads in the past. I definitely want to get into more talking about individual stories about different locomotives, their histories, that stuff like that. and I even got to collaborate with a subscriber of mine that wanted to tell the video story on the American Freedom Train locomotive, 21 Reading 2101, about how it was like a literal speed run of a restoration. Like, the engine was in not that good of a shape to start with, and then they managed to turn it around to become leading the American Freedom Train of 1976 in only 30 days, which is unheard of, especially today. I've even got requests from some people to even like voice act in some of their videos and stuff like that. But I definitely see a lot of potential going forward from here. I definitely look forward to seeing even more subscriber counts, that sort of thing. And even me and my girlfriend have even started up on a second channel where we would be uploading stuff like role plays and that sort of thing, mainly centered around like Undertale, for example.
Sure, yeah.
So I definitely want to, so I kind of like want to broaden my horizons to see what other stuff I can do that people will definitely enjoy.
Yeah, I see you've got a Ralsei plushie behind you there.
Yeah, he's just hiding back there.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude.
That fandom you can blame my girlfriend for getting into, because we met like I'd say 4 or 5 years ago. We just started talking about random stuff, and once we actually started becoming a thing, that's when, because if you sometimes notice in some of my videos, I'll sneak in like a Undertale remix or something like that. Obviously in good taste, like
of course,
some cases, even in one case, I took the Duncan Gets Spooked theme from Thomas and Friends and slowed it down to nearly 200% for the Lacmagantic remaster. And when I listened to it the first time, I was like, whoa. So
did it sound demonic? Like, what is...
It sounded like basically the soundtrack of like a horror theme or something like that. There's been other cases like that with other music tracks. There was even this one case in the Ufa train incident where I found like a really sad piano motif of the Soviet anthem, and it actually worked surprisingly well with not only just the atmosphere of what had happened, but also where it exactly took place. And then Armagh, same thing, some Irish Celtic music for the aftermath of the incident, because it happened in Ireland. So, and then even with time period music too, because City of San Francisco, I managed to find some royalty-free 1930s music to go with the beginning of how the City of San Francisco came to be. And a lot of people were like, wow, where did you find this? This is really good stuff. And some people were even saying it was really appropriate because of the time period this incident took place in. So if I can manage to do that, I'll gladly go with it.
Sure. So one question I really want to know from you, this has nothing to do with YouTube, but I'm just genuinely curious. What do you see as the future of trains in America? Because to me, it seems like trains, they're like kind of nostalgic. There's some commuter trains, but overall it feels like we don't utilize them nearly as much as we could or should. They're almost like a novelty, or they're just used for industry. Where do you think we're going to be using trains more in the future? How should we be using trains? Do you think we're going to adopt them more? How do you see trains being involved in the future of this country?
So definitely, the outlook is kind of hit or miss. In terms of the freight companies, it's honestly becoming, which was already starting to took a steep nosedive recently with the implementation of precision schedule railroading, which is about as precise, trying to pee into a shot glass on a record player spinning at 60 RPM without having it spill. Because here's the thing: government people, and just bean counters in general, they do not know how to run a railroad. So obviously, in terms of freight aspects, it's been kind of going downhill, especially when we're having trains getting bigger and heavier. And I even mentioned it in the Lacmagantic video. They want to try and implement one-man train crews to where it's just the engineer up there, which I'm sorry, that is just way too unsafe, especially since I have 2 sets of crude oil trains that go to and from Philadelphia that pass just across the river from where I'm sitting. So having them run by one crew is just one crew member is just not the way to go. In terms of passenger operations, it's actually the complete opposite because in America, we're all centered around the car way too much. While in Europe, and especially because I have a cousin in St. Petersburg in Russia, he says oftentimes he doesn't even have to drive that much at all. He can do a lot of walking. And in terms of going distances, he could take public transit, especially trains and stuff like that. And I even have one of my aunts in the UK, because I'm half English, half Italian. My auntie Maureen had pointed out how the British rail system, not even though it's not the greatest, it's got a well knit system across the country to the point where not only can it cover so much distance better than a car could and even faster, but also allows for mainline excursions to be a routine occurrence because she's ridden behind Flying Scotsman and Tornado more times than I can count. But in terms of pasture operations in the U.S., it's definitely looking much, much better. I mean, we have Brightline extending all the way down in South Florida by betting on real estate to fund operations, and it's actually been going really, really well for them. Even though people keep getting hit by the trains there because it's all, Florida drivers, oblivious to the trains.
How do you get hit by a train?
So
I don't understand.
That's what I don't understand either. Like, how can you miss something that's as big as a house and is louder than an actual tornado? How can you miss that?
Oh my God.
I never understand that. And with quiet zones, don't get me started on those because I ran into a couple of them in Cumberland. Because if more often than not, people will say, "Oh, I'll definitely hear the train coming." That is not the case. You might not hear the train coming. And with electric trains, that is a big no because the borough of North Wales, which is another Philly suburb not far from me, they actually wanted to initiate quiet zones on all 4 crossings in the town. But thankfully, the FRA put their foot down by saying no because those Silverliner electric multiple units, I've gotten snuck up behind them more often than not. So, yeah, that would obviously not work so well. So now the rule is they have to slow down and blow for each and every crossing. And in terms of pasture operations as well, going back to that again, there's a lot of projects that are opening up to improve what we got, from raising speed limits to replacing century-old bridges and stuff like that, and I'm all here for it. There's even the implementation of introducing pasture service from Philadelphia all the way up to Reading, which are 2 very important cities, and even though nothing's really come up yet, I am all for it. Because I hate traveling down the highway via Route 422 to get from Reading and back again. It's just, oh my gosh, it's horrible.
Sure. And I mean, I don't know much about like traveling on the East Coast where traffic gets backed up, but here on the West Coast, I mean, it just keeps getting worse. And I feel like
absolutely.
trains
I've heard a
can
lot.
have a really big positive impact over here. And in general, like we don't really have much public transportation on the West Coast for whatever reason. I think the cities are newer, so they're built more around cars, and it didn't really become a huge issue until somewhat recently, where populations got
You
denser.
see that narrative. I've seen that narrative a lot in a lot of videos I've watched before from channels like High Iron and stuff like that. And yeah, the same narrative again and again. The answer is always trains.
Yeah, seriously. And there is something really, really cool about trains, and it seems like easier than an airplane. I mean, you can just kind of hop onto it. You don't gotta. Airplanes, it seems needlessly complicated sometimes. Obviously, like they're way faster. So if you're going all the way across the country, then it would probably make more sense to book a plane. At least in some cases. But yeah, I just feel like, I don't know, trains are underutilized. I appreciate like you kind of being passionate about them and sort of having a career around them. It's cool, man. It's really cool.
Yeah, especially considering I have a little bit of I'm a bit of a nervous flyer myself, even though I've taken flight inside a B-29 and a B-24 at the previously mentioned World War II weekend. It's just, if something goes wrong and you're all the way up at like several thousand feet, oftentimes, you might as well just kiss your butt goodbye, especially when watching videos like Air Crash Investigation, which was another inspiration for the documentary. It's just maybe just like, nope. And with driving, oh my gosh, I mean, I'm not a bad driver by any means. I'm not the best by any means either, but some of the people that I've seen on the roads, it honestly scares me. You know, from people that cut you off without using their indicator, looking at you, DC, and you know, just how reckless some people are, especially the people that keep running around the gates at crossing. Is just it just makes me nervous every time. It's just yeah,
Mm-hmm.
having a train to do all the commuting for you, because that's how I used to get to a lot of spots back in the day, was taking a lot of public transit, you know, SEPTA out of Norristown and then going from there however means possible. Yeah, driving made it a little bit more convenient, but you know, having but like I said, with that Reading to Philly passenger service, I wouldn't have to worry about going on to 422 every so often, especially considering at around 5 p.m., especially going west. Good luck.
Mhm. And I feel like there is a lot of truth in that. You like everybody kind of having their own vehicle. Like you know, I'm all for everybody being able to have their own car. I have my own car. It's very nice, but it would be nice to have you know the option to take the train more often. Like that just seems like a good idea.
That's kind of
Mhm.
another idea with Florida East Coast, because they're trying to initiate a public transit system with their Brightline service, where with their trains, where oftentimes you won't you can go get like food or even go to a business meeting without ever having to step foot in the driver's seat of a car and contributing to the parking lot called the interstate or stuff like that.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
Especially considering my car in the site, it's not that bad of a car. It's like a 6 year old Mitsubishi. But in terms of inclement weather, especially snow, it handles the road like a dog, and
Mhm.
that's putting it politely.
Hmm. Yeah, so we've gotten a little bit on a tangent here, a fun tangent nonetheless. But about your
Mm-hmm.
YouTube channel, I see you have some live streams. Can you talk about like what live streaming is for you? Like, what do you like? Do you do it to connect with your community? Do you kind of just do it for fun? Like sometimes you know you play video games. You like what is live streaming for you on your channel? What do you get out of it?
Basically, it's mainly to connect with people, you know, talk with them about certain topics, that sort of thing. But there usually is a general theme, like you know, even most of the time it's just me playing games and stuff like that. And one time it was just a whole live stream dedicated to, you know, since it was my birthday, I wanted to have it like a Q&A, talk with people, stuff like that. Basically, the live streams I do is just almost 100% to connect with the community, you know, reflect on things, talk about different topics in between, you know, that sort of thing.
Hmm. Right. And do you feel like you have gotten closer to your community with live streaming? Is it something you would recommend people do?
Absolutely, absolutely, definitely. In any ways possible. I mean, of course, it's a bit of a slippery slope at times, you know, because in some of my older streams, the encoder had a hard time keeping up with some of the high demand games I had,
Mm.
like World of Warships, War Thunder, that sort of thing, because they demand a lot. But if you can make it work, and you know, you have a big enough audience, you know, you're definitely gonna, you know, not only connect with your fan base more often, you might even meet some new ones just like that, right on the spot. That's sometimes happened with some of my online friends. It's gotten to the case where I have thousands of internet friends and like a handful of real friends. Which I
That's
mean, you
usually how
know,
it
that could
works.
go either way.
Totally. So another question out of left field here. When you rail fan, like when you go to see a specific train passing by, is there any story that stands out to you where like, oh my god, I can't believe I saw that? Or has it
More
been?
often than not,
Mhm.
yes. Sometimes I go out just on a whim just to see what I can get. Sometimes it's, you know, uh, yeah, I do it just because of a significant event. Like for example, there was that doubleheader steam excursion with the Reading and Northern, where they had both of their steam engines on one excursion. Uh, but in terms of stuff like that, like oh my gosh, I can't believe I saw that. That it doesn't happen often, but when it does, it definitely makes it really really memorable. Like getting surprised by like a so-called heritage unit, or which is basically a locomotive in a older paint job, like Pennsylvania Railroad, Reading Railroad, which is, you know, the territory I live in, stuff like that. In other cases, it's just from crazy people. One encounter I had was it was at Macungie, which is a suburb of Allentown. There was a van that got gate trapped where he got stuck in the middle between the gates of a crossing. And obviously, the smart thing to do is, oh, just back up, move out of the way. Nope. His stupid genes kicked in and he darts it across with only like 500 feet from getting hit by an auto rack train that was heading
God.
toward New Jersey. And we were all like, wow, I can't believe we just witnessed that. Thankfully, though, I've been very lucky to not run into incidents like where I catch somebody like a trespasser getting killed on tape, because that's honestly one of my biggest fears. It almost happened before in Norristown, where I live, because a drunk happened to be stumbling around early in the morning, and he literally propped himself like this, fast asleep against one of the rails. First of all, how the hell do you fall asleep that fast? I'd like to get tips because I got insomnia. But I walked up toward the hill called Honolulu to see if anything was coming. Sure enough, the westbound intermodal was coming down the hill, and I tried to yell at him like, "Buddy, get off the track!" Doesn't wake up. And then the engineer and the train comes into view. He's laying it on the horn. He still doesn't wake up. The conductor even gets on the front of the engine via the walkway. He does, to yell at him. He still doesn't wake up. They dump the air into emergency stop, and they actually do hit the guy, but he thankfully survived. If he wasn't wearing a backpack, that snowplow would have severed his spine. But it was a good thing it was a Sunday, because after they built up the air and left, I needed a moment.
Yeah, I bet. Oh my God. Wow, it gets pretty
gosh.
juicy
I've
out
not
there.
released it. I'm not sure if I'm going to release the video because of how traumatic of an experience it was, but it's something I have never forgotten ever since filming at that said location, even though I've filmed there so many times because it's, really, really local.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's almost you go to a NASCAR event and you obviously don't want to see any crash happen, but if it
Oh,
does, it's like, oh
absolutely.
my God, I just witnessed that.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
a sort of weird excitement, or maybe excitement's the wrong word, but it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah. Or interesting, too, because there's even been cases where something unusual happens and I just happen to be at the right place at the right time to see it. There was a case in just outside of Reading. The Reading and Northern was coming out with their yard job out of Spring Street to bring back to their own territory in North Reading to swap out cars and get ready for the fast freight to Pittston. And they happened to take a little bit too many cars with two switcher locomotives, and they stalled right next to where my camera was sitting by one of the control points. So not only did I catch them getting stuck right next to where I was sitting, I even got to catch the relief crew for the morning getting on another pair of engines to come out and rescue them. And as soon as they hooked up those two extra engines, they started moving it like it was nothing. And it was just one of the coolest sights I've ever seen in terms of filming. Still got to work on uploading that, but it was just such an awesome experience because you don't get to see that often. It's like winning a lottery ticket.
Hmm. Yeah,
Just
seriously.
like how some people even caught instances where the coupling fails and the train splits apart while traveling down the line because there's like a weak knuckle or something like that. Like I said, it's just like a lottery ticket. I think Forrest Gump can put it best. My mom always said, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get.
Ain't it the truth? Especially,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, with trains, they're just barreling forward. You never know what's going to
Mm-hmm.
happen. You never really know.
Never know.
Hmm. But yeah, Thomas, we're about at that 1 hour mark, and I just wanted to thank you for joining me today. I definitely learned a lot about trains and didn't I don't know, train stories. It's something that I didn't know I needed, and here you are
Yeah.
delivering. And I just thank you for being you and occupying this niche. In it's cool. I love seeing people kind of thrive talking about what they're truly passionate about. And I think that's a good lesson to anybody who finds themselves thinking about something. Their mind is always wandering to a certain subject. Maybe
Absolutely.
it's worth talking about online and building an audience. Just
That's
saying.
kind of that's how I would put it too. If you're passionate about something and you really want to share it with the world, I'd say absolutely do it because you never know where it's going to take you. And in some cases, it can turn out to be one of the smartest decisions you ever made, and you can build such a huge audience that you never knew you could ever have.
Mm-hmm. Truth. So true. So true. And yeah, with that, we have reached the end. He is Thomas of Thunderbolt 1000 Siren Productions, and definitely check out his channel. You will not be disappointed. There are some crazy stories on there, captivating stuff. And with that, make sure to follow, like, subscribe, or whatever platform you're on, so that you do not miss my voice and our guest in the next one. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks again, Thomas. And that's a wrap.